Hello, my name is Deepak Sharma. The title of my talk is Honoring Shri Bannanje Govindacharya's Legacy. Namaste and pranams to my fellow speakers and members of our virtual audience. It is an honor to speak on this occasion to celebrate the life, work, and legacy of Shri Bannanje Govindacharya. I'm grateful to have been able to speak about my interactions with him in Ambalpadi, as I did last week, when I was just a young 20-year-old man about to embark on a study that would change my life forever. Today, rather than revisiting these wonderful moments, I'd like to take this opportunity to talk about the impact that Shri Bannanje Govindacharya had, and to provoke the Madhva community to think about how they may embrace and perpetuate his influence, and how they may honor his legacy. Shri Bannanje Govindacharya, as all of you undoubtedly know, was an adept and gifted orator. He gave countless pravachanas in Kannada throughout South India about Madhva Vedanta. Before the advent of modern technology, Shri Govindacharya gave pravachanas, for example, to his immediate and closest community at the beloved Janardana temple, a mere coconut's throw from his own lovely abode in Ambalpadi. Acharya traveled extensively to deliver these discourses to hundreds and thousands of bhaktas, all yearning for the knowledge that only Govindacharya could deliver, knowledge about the complexities of Madhva Vedanta made understandable and digestible to the hungry masses, who, of course, were not scholars, not Sanskrit trained, and not virtuoso readers of Madhva literature. He did this with great ease and joy, and largely in his own native Kannada. His presence and impact grew even larger through his TV appearances, and most recently through his YouTube and other online videos. Though he traveled less so in his later life, Shri Govindacharya was a pakka parivrajaka, a wanderer, in the purest sense of the term. Incidentally, his wandering chased the course of my own wandering and my own academic path. In 1996, I was awarded a Fulbright Hays Dissertation Award by the United States government to study with Bannanje Govindacharya for 1 year. He would, I hope, guide my research on Madhva Vedanta. When I arrived in India and contacted Shri Govindacharya to schedule and organize my trip and stay in Udupi, he told me that he had decided to once again travel and give pravachanas, and that I was welcome to join him in his travels and to study with him in the process. Though this was a wonderful opportunity, and I will be forever grateful to him for offering it to me, I also knew that it would not be approved by the Fulbright Hays administrators, and so I had to seek other teachers. Thankfully, I was taken under the tutelage of Shri D. Prahaladacharya, who is now the pontiff of the Vyasaraja Matha, and studied with him at the Purna Prajna Samshodhara Mandiram, of course under the blessings of the Pejar Mata Swamiji at that time. The rest, as they say, is history. Anyway, in addition to addressing hundreds of thousands of devotees, Shri Govindacharya also published extensively in Kannada, with an equally wide and far-reaching audience. His books and teaching style was intended to be easily understood to the uninitiated, yet challenging and insightful to those already well-versed in the nuances of Madhva Vedanta and debates against the Advaita school. And this desire to spread the knowledge of Madhva Vedanta went beyond Karnataka, and for that matter, India. Before teaching me in 1990, Govindacharya thus read Vishnu Dasacharya's Vadaratnavali with Professor Edwin Giroux, a gifted Sanskritist and linguist. He had a few other students with Western heritage and had no trouble teaching them about Madhva Vedanta. I might, of course, be included in this, but on the other hand, I'm also a Shivali Madhva Brahmin, so I was a new phenomena for the Madhva community and for Bannanje, I'm sure. In simplest terms, Bannanje Govindacharya helped to spread Madhva Vedanta to all of those who were interested. I thus urge the Madhva community to embrace and perpetuate this legacy. This, of course, is not entirely acceptable in the Madhva tradition, and there is a tension between restricting and disseminating Madhva teachings. As I wrote in my dissertation and in my second book, according to Madhvacharya, not everyone possesses the eligibility, adhikara, for acquiring knowledge of the Supreme Being and for obtaining moksha. Not every enduring jiva has full access to Madhva root texts, the source of the knowledge that is efficacious for learning about the nature of Brahman, for moksha, and for learning the intricacies of Madhva dialectics. As many of you know, Madhvacharya directly addresses eligibility requirements in his gloss of the first pada of the Brahma Sutras of Badarayana, Attartho Brahma Jignasa. The term then, Atta, glosses the sequence of eligibility. The expanded passage reads, therefore, after having met the requirements for eligibility, the inquiry into Brahman is to be undertaken. The Madhva school of Vedanta is a closed, exclusive, commentarial religion that does not permit outsiders to access root texts. In his bhasha on the Brahma Sutras, however, Madhvacharya also writes, Stri Shudra Brahma Bandhunam Tantrajnane Adhikarita Ekadeshe Parokte Tu Natu Grantaha Purusha Sa Sare. For women, Shudra, and unworthy Brahmins, there is eligibility with regard to the knowledge that is found in the Tantras. However, they are eligible to hear only a portion of the text when it is narrated to them, and they are not eligible with regard to direct study from Shruti. Madhvacharya thus approves of Pandits who teach the gist of portions of the Shastra to the masses who do not have adhikara. Govindacharya surely was this sort of Pandit, and I don't mean this as a criticism. There are few scholars who can reach the status of a public intellectual, and Govindacharya certainly did. But let me return to this tension between restricting and disseminating Madhva teachings. And I should point out that I addressed this issue in the journal Tattvavada, in an article that I published many years ago entitled Madhva Vedanta Beyond India. So I'm reiterating some of the same points I addressed then. During my research trips to India, I was typically asked about the popularity of Vedanta among Western students. Though there is an interest in Vedanta, this interest rarely extends to an interest in Madhva Vedanta. The history of scholarship in Vedanta in the West has been dominated by studies of both Advaita and Vishishtadvaita Vedanta. Only a handful of non-Indian scholars have studied Shri Madhvacharya's school of Vedanta and can claim a modicum of proficiency in his doctrine. The end result is that most Western students of Hinduism believe that all Hindus are monists and in some way or another followers of Advaita Vedanta. Some are so convinced of the veracity of this position that they believe that the theism propounded by Madhvacharya is not really Hindu and that his interpretation of Shruti is inaccurate or far-fetched. Why has this not been prevented? Why is there little interest in Madhva Vedanta among Western Indologists? How can such misconceptions about Hinduism be changed? The earliest scholars of Indian philosophy in the West sought perspectives that were most different from Christian theism. Seeking the unusual, they came upon Shankaracharya's Advaita Vedanta and subsequently invested much of their intellectual efforts in trying to understand a tradition that most clearly opposed their own. Madhvacharya's realism, in contrast, was not so different from the theism to which they were accustomed, leading some to claim that Madhvacharya was influenced by Christianity. Combined with this quest for the mystical Orient was a deliberate and calculated effort to promote Advaitavada by so-called Neo-Vedantins such as Vivekananda, who traveled across the United States, and President Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, who used Advaita Vedanta to unify and pacify India. The effect was that many Westerners and Hindus in India and diasporic Hindus began identifying Hinduism with a variety of Advaita Vedanta, an unfortunate identification which continues to the present time. Other schools, such as Madhvacharya's, have been ignored or categorized as the exception rather than the norm. Since Vivekananda first spoke in Chicago in 1893, most publications on Vedanta in English by and for Westerners have concerned Advaita. Madhva Vedanta research in Western universities is so sorely lacking that it is essential that the Madhva Sampradaya help to fill this deficiency. How can the global Madhva community and Madhva Pandits alter this unfortunate trajectory? Madhva Pandits must strive to publish readable translations of Madhva texts and continue to publish lucid English summaries of doctrines online, not just in Kannada. Most Madhva Pandits, despite being superb Sanskritists and scholars, lack the skills to convey their unparalleled wisdom using the English language. The older generation of Pandits may not be able to satisfy this need, so it is up to younger Madhwas to learn scholarly English and to publish in English and Western academic journals. Not only will this help to propagate Madhva Vedanta to the non-Sanskrit reading Hindu public, but will also provide a way, perhaps the only way, for Madhva Pandits and Madhva Vedanta to enter the Western academic world, have an impact on the field of Vedanta studies in the West, and dispel the dark cloud of Advaita Vedanta. This, of course, is what Shri Bannanje Govindacharya did. In addition, I also wonder about the support of Vedanta studies in the United States and in the West by the Madhva community. There's hardly any support for scholars of Hinduism in general, and of scholars of Hinduism and of Hindu heritage in the United States. In contrast, the last 10 years has seen a burgeoning number of endowed chairs in Jain studies, for example, but not in Hindu, and certainly not in Madhva studies. The Jain population in the United States has seen the value of endowing chairs in U.S. universities. If I'm not mistaken, they've filled 7 or 8 chairs in the last 5 or 6 years, with both Jain and non-Jain scholars of Jainism. Many more students, both Indian and non-Indian, are learning about Jainism, and they are not learning about Madhva Vedanta. What might the Madhva community do to change this? There are members of the Madhva community, and perhaps some who are listening to this, listening to me speak right now, who have been tremendously successful and certainly have the funds needed to endow chairs in Madhva studies. While I support the funding of temples in the United States and India, what would it look like if there were 2 or 3 endowed chairs of Madhva Vedanta at the major research centers in the United States, Harvard, Chicago, Yale, or perhaps a few more chairs at smaller research universities? How would that change the dynamics of Madhva studies and the stature of the global Madhva community? In summary, there is little interest in Madhva Vedanta in Western universities, and it is incumbent upon the Madhva Sampradaya to create and to foster its study. It is only through the efforts and devotion of Madhva Pandits and the glory that the glory and truth of Madhva Vedanta can be shared with the world. Shri Bannanje Govindacharya embraced the spread and dissemination of Madhva Vedanta like no other scholar. It is absolutely necessary that the Madhva community do the same in some of the ways that I have mentioned to honor his legacy. Thank you very much.